The last day of death row. Inmate Marion Bowman's secrets finally revealed. Hello, friends. Tonight we bring you a story that has haunted South Carolina for more than 2 decades. On January 31st, 2025, the state is scheduled to carry out the execution of Marion Bowman, a man many call the gentle giant of death row, yet who prosecutors say is responsible for one of the most shocking crimes in Dorchester County history. In 2001, a young mother named Candy Martin lost her life under harrowing circumstances, and the case has since been marked by betrayal, controversy, and claims of innocence that echo even now as Bowman's final day approaches. For more than 22 years, he has sat on death row, writing poetry, reading scripture, and waiting for this moment. But will his execution truly close the chapter for Candy's grieving family, or raise new questions that will never be answered? Stay with us and subscribe to Death Watch Diaries for more prison documentary stories. The events of February 16, 2001 began like so many others, but by the end of that night, Candy Martin's future had been stolen. She was just 21 years old, a young mother full of promise. That evening, she found herself in the company of 2 men, her acquaintance Marion Bowman and his cousin, James Taiwan Gadsden. Together, they drove into a secluded wooded area in Dorchester County. What happened next would become the heart of a courtroom battle and decades of legal arguments. According to Gadsden's testimony, an argument erupted between Bowman and Candy. Bowman accused her of owing him money and even suspected that she was working as an informant. Tensions escalated, and as Candy attempted to get back into the car, Gadsden testified that Bowman opened fire. The details of that moment are heartbreaking. Witnesses later recalled Candy's desperate plea, "Don't shoot me no more. I have a child to take care of." But the shots kept coming. Multiple gunfire wounds ended her life before she could ever return home. Rather than seek help or show remorse, Bowman and Gadsden left Candy's body behind in the woods. But Bowman's night did not end there. Hours later, he returned with another friend, Travis Felder. Together, they placed Candy's lifeless body in the trunk of her car, drove to a secluded spot, and set the vehicle on fire. In a single night, a young woman's future was extinguished, and her family's world shattered forever. When Candy's burned car was discovered, the community was stunned. The investigation moved quickly, and Bowman soon became a prime suspect. Witnesses stepped forward. Gadsden, Bowman's cousin, claimed Bowman had confessed. Another person testified that Bowman tried to sell Candy's car before the fire. Physical evidence added to the case. Candy's wristwatch was later found in Bowman's possession, and DNA testing linked him to her. To prosecutors, the story was clear. They argued this was a premeditated act, fueled by anger, followed by calculated attempts to destroy evidence. The picture painted was of a man who showed no mercy and no remorse. Bowman was arrested and brought to trial, where the testimony against him proved overwhelming. Despite his consistent claims of innocence, the jury convicted him. In 2002, he was sentenced to death, marking the beginning of a decades-long journey through the appeals system. Over the next 22 years, Bowman lived inside the stark walls of South Carolina's death row. In that time, he developed a reputation among fellow inmates as quiet, even gentle. Nicknamed a gentle giant, he was entrusted with simple jobs like sweeping floors and collecting food trays. These tasks offered rare moments of relief from the isolation of his cell. Bowman turned to faith for strength, reading the Bible daily and writing poetry to capture his reflections. His words often echoed the state's motto, "While I breathe, I hope." He remained deeply connected to his family, speaking with his wife, his daughter, who was born 6 months after his arrest, and his granddaughter, who brought him joy, even as the years ticked by on death row. Despite the years, Bowman's message never changed. He maintained that he was innocent of Candy's murder. In December 2024, just weeks before his scheduled execution, he released a statement claiming his cousin Gadsden had privately confessed to being the true killer. Bowman admitted he had sold drugs to Candy earlier that day, a fact prosecutors used to show their connection, but he denied pulling the trigger. Bowman's lawyers argued that critical evidence was withheld at trial. They insisted that Gadsden's credibility should have been questioned more closely, citing his alleged mental instability and reports of a prison confession in which he admitted responsibility. To them, Bowman's death sentence was built on shaky ground, but the state maintained that Bowman had received a fair trial. They pointed to the DNA evidence, the possession of Candy's belongings, and multiple witness accounts that placed Bowman at the center of the crime. For prosecutors, this was not a case of doubt, it was a case of justice long delayed. South Carolina itself added layers of controversy. For more than a decade, the state had not carried out any executions due to struggles over execution methods and difficulties obtaining lethal injection drugs. In 2024, a new law allowed the state to obtain the necessary substances in secret, restarting executions after a 13-year pause. By the time Bowman's death warrant was signed in December 2024, he became the third inmate scheduled for execution since the state's resumption of capital punishment. Under the law, Bowman was given a choice: lethal injection, electrocution, or firing squad. Or, if he made no choice, the electric chair would be used by default. His lawyers continued to fight for a reprieve, filing last-minute appeals and arguing his conviction was marred by misconduct. But the courts denied each motion, clearing the path for his execution. As January 31, 2025 drew closer, Bowman's final days carried a sense of inevitability. He continued to spend time in prayer, read his Bible, and write poetry. For his family, each phone call carried a heaviness they knew time was running out. Meanwhile, Candy Martin's loved ones prepared themselves for what they saw as long-awaited justice. Candy had been a young mother, her life and future stolen in a single night. For her family, Bowman's execution represented accountability for the pain that had stretched over 2 decades. Witnesses described Bowman in these final weeks as calm, even resigned. He told his supporters that no matter what the state decided, his faith remained unshaken. But he also repeated his claim that he was not the man who pulled the trigger on that February night in 2001. Dear friends, as we close the chapter on the story of Marion Bowman, we are reminded of how one night in 2001 forever changed countless lives. Candy Martin was only 21 years old, a young mother whose future was stolen in an act of violence that left her family broken and grieving. For more than 2 decades, Bowman sat on death row, maintaining his innocence while courts and prosecutors stood firm on the evidence against him. His execution now stands as both a moment of closure and a painful reminder of the tragedy that brought us here. This case shows us how fragile life can be, how quickly choices can destroy families and futures, and how justice, even when carried out, can never restore what has been lost. May Candy's memory never fade, and may her family find peace. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to Death Watch Diaries for more prison documentary stories.